Joe Fortenbaugh here for OddsShark, where I am looking to put a horrendous week in the college football world into the trash can. Short memory spans when it comes to our emotions in this game. We got to move on. It was a terrible week for my college football picks. Bounced back nicely in the pros, but that doesn't matter. We're talking about college football right now, and we're talking about getting things back on track. So we begin with big game bets, and we begin with deja vu all over again. I'll explain that in a minute, as Texas is laying 7 against TCU. Undefeated TCU, total of 64.5. We've seen some early money on the under in this game, from 66.5 to 64.5. But what is Texas doing laying 7 in this spot? This reminds me of the Georgia-Tennessee game from just last week, right? Very public dog in Tennessee. Everyone wants to take the 8. Pros sit around waiting all week. They pounce on Georgia late. They steam it up to 9.5. Georgia rolls. I feel like a rat walking right back into a trap with this one because I like TCU. How can I not want the 7 points here? 7-1-1 against the spread this season. Undefeated overall. Finding ways to win in every crucial situation. Meanwhile, Texas finds ways to lose. Had Alabama on the ropes and blew it. Had Texas Tech, lost in overtime. Had Oklahoma State, got outscored 14-0 in the fourth quarter. Do we really trust Steve Sarkisian to bring down the curtain on TCU? This is a night game, and I think the Sharps are going to line up on Texas. Rat in a trap. 2 weeks in a row, I'll take TCU in this matchup. Game number 2, big one in the AAC. Tulane is laying 2, total of 54.5 against Central Florida. We've seen some over money in this one from 47.5 up to 54.5. More on that in just a moment. Big time showdown here. All right, Tulane currently sitting 8-1, Central Florida sitting 7-2. This is a massive matchup. I'm gonna follow that steam I just talked about earlier. I'll play over 54.5. Tulane has a very diverse offense. They're averaging over 30 points per game this season. They can run very well. They can pass very well. They also have a very good defense. Thankfully, Central Florida looks to have John Reese Plumlee coming back to quarterback this weekend after battling an injury. That's important. Central Florida averaging 29 points per game on the road this season, which is very healthy. Upgrade at the quarterback position should get us over this total. We've seen the steam go up to 54.5. It's a big move. I'm following it over in Tulane and Central Florida. And then finally, what do we do here? Alabama laying 12.5, total of 63.5 at Ole Miss. Old Lane Kiffin trying to pile on to Nick Saban's misery this season. We've seen some under money here as well. Total went from 66.5 to 63.5. I find myself liking Ole Miss. I know that historically we have the trend of Bama coming off the loss and how successful they've been in those spots, big bounce backs. But what happens when they're out of national title contention? Because that's what's happening here. This is a 2-loss Bama team. They realize slim and none are their chances of going to the playoffs, and Slim left the room, right? LSU, Ole Miss wins this game, it buries them. They can still get in, I guess kind of with a miracle, but we've seen this from Saban's teams before. If they miss the playoff or the national championship game, they go to a big bowl game, they're flat sometimes because they play to win national championships at Alabama. All right, now think about this for a second. Bama on the road this year, they struggled. They barely got by Texas. They lost at Tennessee. They lost at LSU. Ole Miss off a bye for this game. Very important to note, Ole Miss only 1 loss, still could win the SEC West. I wish this was a night game. It's not. I find myself wanting the 12.5 with Ole Miss. I think we might get a flat Alabama spot here, I really do. All right, now it feels like we have some trap games mixed into our big games. We do. TCU kind of looks like a trap, maybe laying it with Alabama's a trap. How about we talk about some actual trap games, flip the page, 3 games to watch this week. Now this section was an abject failure last week on my behalf. I thought I found all the best scheduling spots with Memphis, choked it away, James Madison couldn't hang in the second half, you name it. The only one I think I threw out there that worked was Virginia against North Carolina. This week, there are 3 very potential flat spots on the schedule you need to be aware of. Number 1 is Notre Dame, laying 16.5 at Navy. Biggest win of the Marcus Freeman era. You upset Clemson, you hammer them. Everybody storms the field. This is a team that, and a coach that a lot of people thought, well, Brian Kelly's crushing, Marcus Freeman's not cut out for the job. You lost at home to Stanford, to Marshall, you hammer Clemson, you celebrate. And then you go to Navy for a noon start time on the road against the triple option. You don't have a good week of practice against a triple option, they're gonna get you. I would look to Navy plus 16.5. Trap game number 2, Arkansas +3 against LSU. I think you know where I'm going here. LSU, huge win over Alabama. Brian Kelly finally gets past Nick Saban. LSU in the driver's seat to try to win the SEC West. Everybody loves them right now. Everything's cooking. Now you're going on the road to play Arkansas, who just lost to Liberty. Be very careful with that game. Very careful. I haven't played Arkansas just yet, but be very careful with that game. And then finally, Mississippi State +16.5 against Georgia. Georgia, some people doubted them like me. I took Tennessee last week. Georgia's defense not as good. Georgia struggled in some spots this year on the road against Missouri. I think it was Kent State that gave them some problems. They hosted Tennessee. They blasted the doors off them. The final score is not indicative of how that game played out. All right? So now they're in the driver's seat to be the #1 seed. Even with a loss between now and then, they're still getting into the playoff. On the road against Mississippi State, laying a huge number. Mississippi State, 5-0 at home this season. It's not like the murderer's row of home schedules, but they beat Memphis, Bowling Green, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Auburn. They can cause a problem here. And we've seen Georgia sleepy at times in some spots this season, so be very careful there. I will be making that bet on Mississippi State. We could take some of those games, possibly Mississippi State, put it into this week's People's Parlay. I got involved last week, ruined it for everybody. Not exactly. We only hit one of the three. The theme for last week's People's Parlay was Moneyline Dogs. Moneyline Dogs. We wanted to beef it up. And for the individual who called the Seahawks, job well done. For the individual who called Syracuse and myself who took the Commanders, no bueno. Commanders, thank you very much for that, by the way. Could have made me look like a genius. Up 17-7 over the Vikings. Completely fold and collapse. Thank God we got the +3.5 on that one. But that's a story for another day. So here's going to be the theme this week for the People's Parlay. I'm getting out of the way. I'm turning it over to you. We're going to put it up on my Twitter, at Joe Fortenbaugh, at OddShark in the middle of the week. I want home dogs. You can take the points or the money line, but it's going to be home dogs only, college and pro. That'll be up. We'll announce who's involved in the NFL preview later in the week. If this thing ends up hitting, we're going to send you a bunch of cool swag. You can do what you want with that. Maybe some of those People's Parlay picks could from the selection, let's get the brain going, could come from the selection below as we get into college football rapid fire. Some of the top picks we're going to be playing this week. Auburn -1.5 over Texas A&M. Iowa State -1 over Oklahoma State. Texas Tech +4.5 over Kansas. Oregon, Washington over 73. Those are going to be the four picks we like in the college football rapid fire this week. Let's begin with Auburn -1.5 over Texas A&M. Texas A&M has completely fallen apart here late in the season. They're an absolute mess. They've lost 5 straight. They're 0-3 on the road, 1-2 against the spread on the road. They rank 99th in scoring. Auburn just fired Brian Harsin. First game out with Cadillac Williams as the interim head coach. Went to overtime against Mississippi State, a very spirited effort. I believe Auburn cares. I believe A&M doesn't. I'm going to be playing Auburn -1.5. Game number 2. Iowa State -1 over Oklahoma State. Similar situation. I think Oklahoma State is packing it in. They had a shot at the Big 12 championship. Since then, they've lost 3 of 4. They just lost to Kansas this past weekend. Last 2 games, they have been outscored 85-16. Mike Gundy's squad looks like a mess. I will take Iowa State. Game number 3, Texas Tech +4.5 over Kansas. Kansas just had that huge win over Oklahoma State. 6th win on the season. They are bowl eligible. They tore down the goalposts. They partied, they celebrated. Now they're gonna go to Texas Tech and lay 4.5 in a flat spot against a Red Raiders team who at home this season has beaten Houston, Texas, and West Virginia. Not the best of resumes, but those are some decent wins, especially Texas at home. And they just gave TCU all they could handle last week on the road at TCU. 4.5 with Texas Tech. Don't be surprised if they win, they came out right. And then finally, Oregon, Washington over 73. I make 2 or 3 of these bets every year. Gut plays on 2 absolute shootouts. I used to love it when it would be Mike Gundy's Oklahoma State team against Dana Holgerson's West Virginia team. I like this game to just be explosive. Okay, Oregon 9th in scoring, Washington 13th in scoring. Washington's defense stinks. Oregon's gonna try to hang a huge number to convince the playoff committee that they should be in if they run the table. We're going over there. Thank you for checking us out and for sticking with me despite the cold week. We will be bouncing back. We bounce back quickly in the NFL. We're going to carry it over here as well. John Anik and I got together to preview Saturday's UFC 281 card. That is up on OddShark. Check it out. Let us know what you think, and best of luck with your bets this week.